Welcome to Group 2's presentation on aviation matters in South Africa.
Hello, I'll be starting off Group 2's presentation project focused on the South African aviation industry. Aviation in South Africa began as an airmail operation when Major Alistair Miller founded Union Airways in 1929. After a rocky first few years trying to make ends meet, ending in a crash, the South African government eventually stepped in, taking over operation, renaming it South African Airways, or SAA, in the 1930s, and eventually including passenger transport operation as well. In the takeover, it gained proprietorship over the air transport industry as the country's national flag carrier for almost half a century, with only a secondary post-war Com Air carrier being offered secondary feeder routes from 1946 on. Apartheid proved to be a tumultuous time for the country, of course, but also severely affected SAA's business as well. But in 1991, the air transport industry of South Africa was deregulated, and there was a movement to push the industry to more closely mirror the American experience with passenger transport, including frequent flyer miles, class upgrades, and more. Shortly following this, several commercial airlines entered into the fray, and eventually discount airlines. As is the case universally, the airline industry is a tough business financially, as evidenced by the table which shows in chronological order the 21 airlines to have operated in South Africa, some only lasting mere months. It is widely accepted that the continued bailouts of the ailing national carrier SAA over other air carriers, as well as SAA's past monopolistic tactics, strong-arming their competition, present a tough environment for new commercial entrants to successfully establish themselves in the South African aviation industry historically. Within South Africa, there is a strong and growing air transport industry, including foreign tourism, with 3.2% of South Africa's GDP coming from aviation. For reference, civil aviation accounts for roughly 5.2% of the U.S. economy. Several aspects of the industry affect the economy in a beneficial manner. The jobs produced, the airline spending, the connectivity of the country to the world, and the benefit to ease of trade and tourism. Airlines, airport operations, aircraft manufacturers, navigation service providers, and on-site shops altogether comprise roughly 70,000 active jobs in South Africa. The secondary sector that serves to supply the above aspects of the aviation industry make up another 113,000 jobs roughly. A third tier of roughly 48,000 jobs is estimated to be supported through the wages of these employees within the aviation industry. This doesn't yet take into account the spending of foreign tourists flying into South Africa who prop up the local economy with an estimated 241,000 additional jobs. This totals to roughly 472,000 jobs supported by the air transport industry in South Africa. Moving on to spending, the air transport industry equates to roughly $5.2 billion of GDP in US dollars in South Africa. In addition to this, foreign tourist spending provides another $4.3 billion, giving a grand total of $9.4 billion in spending. Connectivity is absolutely fundamental to stimulate the economic growth for all countries involved, allowing the flow of not only people, but goods, finances, and ideas. Below shows the proportion of each country's market for passenger aviation as a percentage on the left, as well as growth in the figure on the right. Flights within the continent naturally account for the largest share, followed by Europe and Asia Pacific. Of note, though, is the significant and rather quick growth of connectivity and flow in air transport between South Africa and the Middle East recently, as shown in the figure.
South Africa is known to have few major concerns for their airports throughout the country when it comes to safety and security. Terrorism is very high, and terrorists are very likely to try to carry out attacks in South Africa. The main threat is from individuals who may have been inspired by terrorist groups, including Daesh, may carry out loner attacks. These terrorist attacks can include, but are not limited to, hijackings and kidnappings. On top of the terrorism that the airports face, there are also political protests and demonstrations that occur regularly. There are regular protests and demonstrations that can turn violent. Violence could affect participants and bystanders, and this can happen anywhere in South Africa on short notice. There are advisories for these type of situations when traveling to the country, and alongside terrorism and political agendas, the crime rate overall is extremely high as well. In regards to the airport, There is a high crime rate, including carjackings, house robbery, rape, sexual assault, and murder. Violent crimes can take place anywhere, including in terrorist destinations and transport hubs. With all of these concerns in mind, in regard to safety, it is best to understand where you are at all times when traveling anywhere in the country and to remain vigilant. Tariff cuts have become a bigger concern in the past years, with regulated tariffs having increased by some 160% since 2010. The regulator has now ordered a rollback of 35.5% for the coming year. This has been taken well by the respective airlines and airports. However, it does bring concerns that follow with the cuts. There are unanswered questions about how it will make up for the shortfall of revenue, and the medium-term outlook does not look good. This type of concern is crucial, seeing as it has a direct impact on the revenue balance within the country. It appears there will be an immediate loss of revenue, but it has been noted that an increase to concessions to help balance the revenue stream. Alongside the tariff cuts, finances overall have become a major concern and even have been detrimental to some airports, with some airports within the country not being able to finance emergency systems and emergency services. They have been downgraded in their respective airport category. The downgrading of airports unfortunately points to the lack of funding within the country, and there are also questions of corruption within the government and the airport management companies. Plettenberg Bay, Richards Bay, and Tata all saw a downgrade of their airport status between 2019 and 2021 for various reasons due to overall financing issues throughout the country. In South Africa, there are ongoing nation power shortages with rolling power cuts as well. Scheduled regular power outages, known as load shedding, have become longer and can occur daily. This has been a continuous occurrence in South Africa, and it accommodates into the safety and security of the entire aviation industry within the country as well. This continuous issue has been due to issues with their power supplier, Eskom. And while there are diesel generators at each of the airports that should be able to allow for continuous operations, even in the events of power cuts, whether planned or unplanned, still remains a concern due to its potential impact that it will and has had on the overall operational capacity of these airports.
Hello class, I'm Mado, and today I'll be talking about the bilateral air service agreements and the government oversight and taxation. Alright? So, as for today, even though South Africa is not part of the ERAU Multilateral Convention on Open Skies, however, South Africa does participate in International Aviation through Bilateral Air Service Agreement, ASA, with various countries, as we can see here in the graph. Now, the bilateral ASA are agreements between two countries that govern the operation of air services between them. Now, this agreement typically covers aspects such as designated airlines, route, frequency of flight, capacity, and other related matters. Now, this agreement usually have a purpose and the key elements here. As we can see, some of the key elements to note here is the Nyamusukro decision, which took place in Ivory Coast in 1988, which contributed to South Africa entering the bilateral ASA with various countries, as I mentioned before. Now, of course, there are key elements, there are benefits, and there are also some bad aspect of it. There are some challenges. Now, some of the challenges happened after 1970 when the bilateral agreement has to stop. And then what happened is South Africa apartheid policy was underlying cause of the renegotiation of bilateral agreement by the United States. And now the United States Congress passed the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act of 1986, which resulted in the immediate termination of the air service agreement between the two countries. So there needed to be other votes and procedures to have another agreement. And also, of course, over the years, we were noticing some change, and then change has to be made on the agreement in order to move forward. Now, some of the future trend and emerging issues that we not here are the airline alliances, and of course, South Africa is trying to enter now on the Open Sky Agreement. It's not yet done, but it's getting there. Without also forgetting the other suggestion strategy to maximize the benefit of a service agreement. Now, let's talk about government oversight and taxation. These two concepts here shape the country's economy and contribute to the provision of public services. First and foremost, government oversight in South Africa plays a vital role in ensuring transparency, accountability, and effective management of public funds. Oversight bodies such as the Auditor General of South Africa diligently monitor the use of public funds, conducting audits to promote transparency and prevent corruptions. Through their efforts, they help maintain the public trust in the government financial practices. Talking about government, it's where we have three in South Africa, which are national, provincial, and local. Now, let's move our attention to tax compliance and enforcement. South Africa operates under a progressive income tax system where individuals and businesses are taxed based on their income or profits. So pretty much the system ensures that those who earn more contribute to a higher proportion of the income to the states. Additionally, the revenue collected through taxation has a profound impact on the development of the country. It funds essential public services such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, social welfare programs, and defense, and every other stuff. Now, these investments contribute to the overall well-being of the social economic progress of the nation. Now, to encourage investment and economic growth, the government offers tax incentive and establishes special economic zones, or called SEZ. These initiatives provide tax breaks and other benefits to attract both domestic and foreign businesses. They promote job creation, they stimulate economic activity, and enhance South Africa's competitiveness in the global market. All right, this is all from me. Thank you very much. If you have any question, I am open for. Bye.
The South African Aviation Authority recently undergone an ICAO audit. During this audit, the ICAO reviewed South Africa's air traffic and navigational procedures. It was discovered that many of the South African airports are not compliant to South African aviation regulations. These non-compliant findings are maintaining each flight approval procedure as prescribed, as well as several approach issues, which led to the suspension of the ILS operations at more than 10 airports until the ATNS submits corrective action plans to mitigate the safety risks coming from this non-compliance. The SACAA must submit a correction action plan to reinstate the ILS operations at the affected airports. But until then, major delays can be seen for the affected airports due to the weather and needing to maintain VFR operations at those airports. While other airports are not affected by the audit, they are seeing an influx of congestion due to the rerouting of aircraft. The SACAA, during a press conference, stated they are upholding the country's aviation safety and it remains paramount and must always remain prioritized and is looking to correct these issues. The affected airports are listed on the right-hand area of the slide, with the most notable being Cape Town International Airport, as this is the second largest airport in South Africa. South Africa's air traffic infrastructure. Outside of South Africa's recent audit, South Africa uses central airspace management system, as well as a collaborative decision-making and air traffic flow management system as the country's key component to air traffic management. This allows for full capacity air transport without any safety concerns of an overloaded airspace. These tools provide improvements to schedule, gates, terminals, and efficient use of airports and airspace. Air traffic control in South Africa has enhanced infrastructure, reduced congestion, optimal airspace capacity, and adheres to the safety regulations, thanks to the CAMU, CDM, and ATFM. Because of these, South Africa's air traffic issues and congestion has been kept to a minimum outside of the ICAO's audit findings. South Africa is part of the African Union Single African Transport Air Market. This is a combination of 28 additional countries. This union was created in 2018 to enhance airline opportunities within the continent of Africa. South Africa is ranked 76th globally for U.S. exports, but is facing hardships for general aviation due to operating costs and the slow economy. There are some concerns for long-term sustainability to the air transportation sector of South Africa. The turning point is still unclear given the large investors supplementing South Africa's aviation sector. The table on the right shows South Africa's market size. Most notable is the small rise in the overall market size, as well as local production decreasing and total exports maintaining the same rate. The positive trends show an increase in total imports and imports from the U.S. Air transportation in South Africa accounts for $8.8 billion in foreign tourism, $150 billion in foreign direct investments, and $104 billion in exports. In 2015, the statistics for general aviation travel are as follows. For instructional, it's 6.6%, business 3.6%, and pleasure, making up most of it, has 95.8%, making tourism the highest percentage of South Africans' general aviation market. The aviation sector alone covers 472,000 jobs, $9.4 billion in GDP, and holds 3.5% in South Africans' overall GDP, supported by air transport and foreign tourism.
The Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment is the highest government organization in South Africa with oversight of the environment. Their most recent study, labeled the 2021-22 National Environmental Compliance and Enforcement Report, shows the same environmental concerns that were addressed at the World Economic Forum's 2022 Global Risks Report. Like the rest of the world, South Africa has concern over climate action, extreme weather, and biodiversity loss. South Africa, an ICAO member state, is signatory to the Act Corsia document of ICAO. Corsia, the leading document which outlines ICAO's role in reducing greenhouse emissions. Aside from this initiative, South Africa is also taking a leading role in assisting other countries within the South African development community in their adherence to offsetting greenhouse emissions and being a member state on the Committee on Aviation Environmental Protection. The ACT portion of ACT Corsia is a sponsored partnership between countries within ICAO. South Africa has partnered with 6 countries local to them in order to help them implement Corsia. Corsia is ICAO's plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the upcoming decades. It is applicable to companies that meet a threshold of CO2 emissions and involves self-monitoring, reporting, and making purchases of sustainable aviation fuel to assist in the reduction and offset of greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, other steps can be taken within companies to reduce their reported greenhouse gas emissions, such as switching to a fleet of electric vehicles. One example of an aviation organization in South Africa to demonstrate compliance to environmental concerns would be the Airports Company South Africa. They've sought adherence to the International Organization of Standards 14001 standard. Airports Company South Africa acknowledges that aviation has a significant impact on the environment and accepts their stewardship and care for the environment with their implementation and maintenance of their environmental management system. Their environmental management system is composed of sectors relating to policy, planning, implementation and operation, monitoring, and management review, to name just a few. Owning and operating 3 of the top 4 airports in the country, one of the current initiatives by the company is a partnership with the Endangered Wildlife Trust to minimize bird strikes and other wildlife contact by applying environmentally sensitive management techniques. Airport owners in South Africa take concern with environmental affairs within the country. Airline companies as well. South African Airways is a holder of the International Air Transport Association's Environmental Assessment Program Stage 2 status. This commitment to the environment and South African Airways environmental programs show concern and action towards protecting the environment. Civil aviation in South Africa is governed by the Civil Aviation Authority. Their mission statement is to regulate civil aviation safety and security in support of the sustainable development of the aviation industry. This goes to say they take safety seriously. As of July 2015, the CAA has implemented mandatory use by aviation organizations of safety management systems. Requirements include risk assessment, safety performance, hazard identification, management of change, an accountable manager, and an organizational SMS manual. On the CAA's webpage, technical guidance material or TGMs are published for the implementation of SMS programs. Aviation safety operations is one of 3 CAA oversight areas. They ensure the regulatory compliance and oversight of all things civil aviation. The TGM for risk assessment is broken down into 4 fundamentals which define and expand on risk assessment. The first fundamental is an overview of risk management. The subsequent fundamentals are risk probability, risk severity, and risk tolerability. These fundamentals are essentially the same as you would find in any safety management system in any organization in any country. Safety performance as described by the CAA is a continuous process beginning with the designation of responsibilities, the review of safety policy and objectives, identifying key issues, and main focus. Moving on to determining data needs and finding indicator specifications, next will be the collection of data and report of results, the analysis of those results, the actions on the findings, and the evaluation of safety performance indicators along with the supervision of those changes. Aspects of good performance indicators include having indicators that are valid, reliable, sensitive to changes of what is measured, and not susceptible to bias in calculation or interpretation. Furthermore, capturing the data should be cost-effective. Hazard identification is identified as the first step in the risk management process by the CAA. They define a hazard as: a hazard can be considered as a dormant potential for harm which is present in one form or another within the aviation system or environment. Elements identified for consideration in organizations' SMS programs include people, procedures, equipment, and the operational environment, according to the TGM on hazard identification. The management of change part of the South African safety management system is simply the implementation and supervision of risk-reducing control measures. There's a 7-step process to it outlined in the TGM on management of change. The accountable manager aspect of the safety management system is nothing more than an organizationally identified safety officer. The final aspect of organizational safety in South Africa is the development and submission of an organizational safety management system manual. Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa wants organizations to succeed. Therefore, they provide a TGM specifically for the development of organizations' SMS manuals, which have to be submitted to the CAA for approval once completed.
There is a global shortage of around 4 million skilled workers to fill cybersecurity jobs. One solution to close the cybersecurity skills gap is emerging in South Africa, where marginalized youth are training at academies in Cape Town and Johannesburg. While there is a lack of investment and awareness of cybersecurity threats in South Africa, which causes South Africans to be ideal targets for cyber attackers, they have now begun to train youth at young ages to perform these skills. This can be beneficial to the country's countermeasures due to its current shortage in training and professionals who are currently trained and actively performing these skills. It is even shown in the graph that almost 11% of cyber incidents or threats are based on fun and personal doing without actual cause. This number is high, seeing as there is no actual motive behind it, while the criminal aspect of this is sitting at almost 40%. These are high numbers, and with these numbers remaining high like this, the country faces seriously detrimental outcomes. One mode of countermeasures that the country has implemented is the NIS directive. The EU Directive on Security of Network and Information Systems, or NIS directive, is in part aimed at improving cybersecurity in a number of key sectors, and this includes aviation. The NIS directive requires operators of essential services, also known as OES, to maintain a specific level of network security. With this being the case, it calls for a drastic shift in the cybersecurity landscape that the country currently implements. The implementation process for this is specific to the member country while differing between them according to the UK NIS. The UK implemented the Network and Information System Regulations, UK NIS, on May 10, 2018, which has classifications of what are OESs, and South African airports are classified as such because they are an air carrier flying more than 30% of annual terminal passengers at any UK airport, which has more than 10 million terminal passengers a year, or more than 1 million total annual terminal passengers across all UK airports. With this classifying them as such, they are required to maintain that specific level of cybersecurity as an OES. While maintaining this level, they are under strict enforcement of such. National authorities must oversee the enforcement of these OESs while maintaining a national POC that ensures compliance with the NIS directives, and lastly, must maintain at least one computer security incidents response team, and these all fall into the Cybersecurity Countermeasures Program for South Africa to help them combat their lack of cybersecurity they currently have and the overall security that they have against such threats.
In conclusion, the aviation industry in South Africa plays a crucial role in the country's economy, serving as a vital link for domestic and international connectivity, with significant growth expected. Between 2017 and 2037 alone, South Africa's aviation industry is estimated to grow by 102%, as shown in the table below. The nation's major airports and interregional concerns provide essential infrastructure for efficient air travel, while their participation in international aviation through agreements similar to Open Skies and bilateral air service agreements fosters global collaboration. While going through their own growing pains, South Africa's government oversight and taxation policies do ensure regulatory compliance and sustainable growth within the industry. While air traffic issues and congestion pose ongoing challenges, the country does actively work to enhance efficiency and passenger experience to keep up with the increase in demand and flow. Additionally, the impact of general aviation in South Africa is significant, and the industry's commitment to environmental sustainability are of more and more importance and focus. As is expected of an air transport industry, safety management remains of the highest priority, with stringent measures in place to ensure the well-being of passengers and crew. Also concerning passenger and crew safety, the need for robust cyber threat countermeasures to safeguard critical systems and data is a topic of ongoing discussion and investment for the country's aviation sector. Through comprehensive efforts in all these areas, the aviation industry in South Africa continues to evolve, adapt, and contribute significantly to the nation's economic growth and global connectivity more and more, establishing its place in the world as a strong and vital nation's industry. Thank you for your time and attention today.
And that concludes Group 2's presentation on South Africa. This slide and the following slide has all of our references.